Mr President, I second the motion for the address in reply to the Governor's opening speech. And let me say it is a pleasure and an honour to rise for the first time in this House as a member of the Southern Metropolitan Region, as a member of an Andrews Labor government. I begin by congratulating you, Mr President, on your re-election, and I congratulate all the newly elected members to this chamber in our class of 2014. Let me start by congratulating Daniel Andrews on his leadership, his commitment, his policies and his plans over the past 4 years, and most importantly, his passion and desire to make Victoria inclusive and active once again. I have no doubt he will be a very successful Premier. I also want to publicly congratulate the whole Labor team from head office, led brilliantly by my good friend and State Secretary Noah Carroll. On every level, by every test, it was a brilliant campaign. As the only Labor representative in Southern Metro, I recognise that I have a big responsibility. I'm the fourth Labor representative in the region, after Evan Thornley, Jennifer Huppert and the recently retired, much-loved and universally respected John Lenders. I thank John for his service, and I certainly wish him well for his future. Mr President, no one comes to this parliament without the support and commitment of a large number of people. I'm grateful to all those who have supported me during my time in Labor politics, and also those that have worked for my election. In particular, I wish to firstly and foremostly thank Ari Suss for his friendship and our shared history. His grandmother and I date way back to Shanghai. Dr Henry Pinskier, whose sense of honour shines bright, to Peter Khalil, who is a truly impressive person and a great friend to boot. Sam Ray, who was the brother that I never had, to Ben Carroll, the member for Niddrie and the Other Place, who is not just a good friend of mine, but a great example of a local MP that works hard for his community. I also thank Fiona Richardson, the member for Northcote in the Other Place, who is as much a mentor to me as she is friend. I've been fortunate to be influenced by a number of other people who I have an immense amount of respect for. They include Theo Theophanous, Stephen Conroy, Tony Windsor and Michael Capel. All are formidable individuals, and they all use politics as a means to an end. And that end always has been and always must be good public policy. This is the best lesson that I ever learnt from all four. Never lose sight of the destination. The policy outcome must always be paramount. But Mr President, it's not just professional influences that have shaped me, but personal ones too. On my mother's side, as with so many in the Melbourne Jewish community, it starts with the trauma of the Holocaust. In 1935, just 8 days after my grandparents' wedding, my grandfather Gottfried Strauss was taken by the Nazis and first sent to Dachau. He was imprisoned for 3.5 years before my grandmother, Irene Strauss-Niemeyer, managed to have him released on the condition that they left Germany with little more than the clothes on their back. Sadly, he was never the same man again, and to honour him today by taking the oath on his Bar Mitzvah Torah scroll was very special indeed. But as a result of that tragedy, my grandmother needed to do the heavy lifting, and she was indeed a formidable woman. In mid to late 1939, she arranged passage for her 2 brothers, her parents and my grandfather to Italy, where they boarded a ship that took them to Shanghai, which was the only port open to Jewish refugees. There my mother and my aunt were born. And in 1946, one of my grandmother's cousins, Berthold Meyer, who was one of the Dunera boys and then living in Gippsland, saw the family name on a Red Cross list and sponsored them out here. But not content with her own safe arrival here, my grandmother took a bus to Canberra to speak with Immigration Minister Arthur Corwell, a great friend to the Jewish people, by the way. And she did so on behalf of her friends that had been left in Shanghai, with nobody to look after them, no family here, and no one to sponsor them out. That intervention saw to it that the Koenig and the Spicer family histories remain a shared one with ours to this day. Three generations on, our families remain close. My mother, Noemi, also remains an inspiration. It is often joked within our family that Mum is the best Jewish saint there is. Nothing is too much for her to help somebody in need. And that's not a surprise, because she's spent her whole life dedicated to others as a primary school teacher. Her selflessness and her desire to see everyone reach their potential helps drive me to see that same outcome for every child today. My father, George, had it no easier. Due to the ill health of his mother and later his father, he had responsibility thrust upon him at the tender age of 11. Their needs became his, and his income became theirs. Again, selflessness drove my father to achieve and succeed, and his work ethic and generosity have ensured that he has been and remains a great role model for me today. My parents have been married for nearly 49 years. They remain a great team and a wonderful example to my wife Deborah and myself and our children of what can be achieved through hard work, perseverance, a lot of love, and maybe just a smidge of understanding and compromise. My aunt, Dagmar, my mother's youngest and only sister, has treated me as the son that she never had. She also had a profound influence on me, as she and her husband, my uncle Ehud, are both journalists who have taught me to always seek answers and never to give up until I was satisfied. My sister, my only sibling, unfortunately now lives in San Diego with her family, and we remain close despite the tyranny of distance, with large thanks to Skype and to FaceTime. My in-laws, Cheryl and Alan, along with Deborah's sisters, Rochelle and Samantha and their own families, have also been embracing and supportive, and even share their schnitzels with me on Friday night Shabbat dinners. Of course, everybody in this place knows that we don't come into it alone. It's very much a shared journey. My experience is no different. Deborah, my wife, has been an amazing support. Deborah is an extraordinarily strong woman, not afraid to tell me what she's thinking, which she does regularly. We have 3 children, Zoe and Asher and Benjamin, who mean the world to me. And while this job I know can become all-consuming, my commitment to them, my commitment to Deborah and my commitment to the children will always be that I'm there for first and foremost. And in turn, I believe that this will make me a better legislator. Mr. President, my own journey started as a 15-year-old when I joined the ALP inspired by the politics of both Bob Hawke and Paul Keating. And it's appropriate to thank both the Great Australian Labor Party for their confidence in me, but also all of the branch members who work so hard and contribute so much to our party. In my professional career, I've run my own small business, I've held positions in the commercial and finance sector, and I've worked in government both at state and federal level. I've also spent 3.5 years as the Chief Executive Officer of the Victorian Association of Forest Industries. I learnt a great deal about fighting against ideological attacks on the timber industry, and then sadly through the devastation of the Black Saturday fires. Nearly 4 years on and away from the industry, I remain a passionate advocate for our local wood and paper products, and by extension, rural and regional Victoria, despite obviously being a metropolitan MP. Mr. President, Victoria is on the whole a prosperous community, but we all know that the benefits of that prosperity are not reaching everyone in our community. The capitalist system is very good at generating wealth, better than any other economic system devised or thought of. That's why, with due respect to my friends on the left, I'm not a socialist. But it's not so good at making sure that wealth reaches every locality, every family and every citizen. And that's why, with due respect to my friends on the right, I'm not a conservative. The tendency of capitalism to concentrate wealth and to stifle opportunity must be countered by positive action by government. And that's why, if anything, I'm probably a social democrat. And that's why I joined the Labor Party. I don't believe in class warfare, and I have no problem with wealth honestly acquired. Some of my best friends are wealthy, and to them I say mazel tov. There is no contradiction between the healthy pursuit of prosperity and a dedication to fighting for fairness and justice and for a better, stronger community. But one of the biggest issues facing society today is in fact not capitalism, it's not socialism, it's social inclusion. The role of government is to be inclusive and to support those who are least able to look out for themselves. We need to provide them a voice to those who struggle to speak. It's not about smaller government, it's not about bigger government, it's about smarter government. It's about providing for those who need our help most, the long-term unemployed, our at-risk children, our homeless, often through carefully targeted government action while not allowing welfare dependency to develop. It means preventing the development of an underclass with all its attendant social pathology, such as we have seen in Great Britain and the United States. It means creating a society in which we all celebrate their differences, not being fearful of bigotry, discrimination on the grounds of gender or race, ethnicity, religion, sexuality, gender identity, or even disability. This is how we don't leave anybody behind. This is how we become more inclusive. Since our federal government cares little about social inclusion and has slashed significant funding to Victoria, the burden of carrying out these policy objectives now fall upon all of us. And underpinning every other social policy must be a focus on jobs. Nothing undermines social cohesion, nothing creates social exclusion, nothing blights the life chances of children more than entrenched unemployment. Providing an economic environment in which quality, well-paid jobs are created and sustained is the best and in fact the only way to create a society in which every person has a sense of self-worth and belief. One of the most important components of any plan to sustain and expand employment is technical and vocational education. Closing TAFE colleges is quite literally closing the doors to a better future in the face of all of our young Victorians, and particularly those from lower income families and families of non-English speaking background. So it was great to see that the Premier and the Deputy Premier, on their very first day in office, reopened the doors to Swinburne Lilydale TAFE as part of our commitment to revitalising the TAFE sector. Mr President, there are three particular policies or pillars within the broader social inclusiveness remit that I wish to highlight. I don't quote Mark Latham very often. In fact, I doubt you'll ever hear me quote from him again. But he was quite right when he said that education was the first rung on the ladder of opportunity, and so education must remain the first pillar. Now, I support all schools full stop, be they government, independent or religious, but state primary and secondary schools are the unique responsibility of our government. We need to ensure that children in our public schools have access to high quality teaching and a high level of resources regardless of where they live. I could talk about many schools from Southern Metro, but today I will just mention one, the Caulfield Park Community School. This is a state school that provides a supportive environment for students who have found that traditional schools have not been able to meet their needs. The school does great work with students who might otherwise drop out of education altogether. It's a good example of how an inclusive school system ought to operate, not leaving anyone behind. And we need to make sure that we do not leave it or the students that attend it now or in the future behind as well. The second policy I wish to mention is social housing. It's neither sexy nor attracts the media's attention, but it's something that we need to focus on, it's something that we need to improve, and it's something that we need to get right. We have two problem areas. Firstly, in short-term crisis for women in domestic violence situations, and secondly, with longer-term housing for our ageing population. And this remains my second pillar. The third and final pillar that I wish to raise is disability access. We have made enormous strides recently, and the NDIS will always remain a proud Labor reform. But it is only the beginning and not the end. We need to get greater consistency of disability access in public and private spaces. And I challenge members, not just in this place, but across both chambers of Parliament, to come together for a Disability Awareness Day with me when they try and get around their duties, either in a wheelchair or as sight affected, to better understand how limiting our society can be, how isolating it can be, and again, how far we have to go to become more inclusive and not exclusive. Mr President, I've been fortunate. My story is what drives me and what I seek to achieve and ultimately will define me. Before sitting down, I wish to do two more things. Firstly, I wish to thank all of our parliamentary staff for putting up with us, especially the staff here in the Legislative Council. A special mention to the memory of Russell Bowman. He and I would have got up to a lot of mischief today. Secondly, I also want to note that this coming year is the 25th anniversary of the Parliamentary Internship Program, of which I am an alumni from 1997. David Davis, from the other side, was my supervising MP at the time, and do I have some stories? But I will also hold them for another time as well. And with that, Mr President, I think it's time to roll the sleeves up and get down to work. Thank you.